Okay, great. Let's stand for the pledge so we may start this meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
States of America and
to
to the republic for which it stands,
one
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with
liberty.
liberty and justice for all.
As a way of respecting, honoring, and creating awareness about our past, we begin our village board meetings by acknowledging that New Paltz is on the ancestral land of the Munsee, Esopus, and Lenape people.
Okay, so for additions to this agenda, we have item number 3. This is the resolution regarding Transgender Remembrance Day and Awareness Month. And that is it as far as items to be added to this agenda. So I motion that we approve the business agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So COVID directives as our first announcement. Would someone like to take that as a discussion topic?
Sure. Basically, we just wanted to reiterate with the community or alert them if they didn't know already that our infection rate is up and we are decidedly in the second wave. So we have to start thinking like it's March and April again and behaving like it's March and April again so that we can flatten out this curve again. But we are, the numbers are definitely there. It's not just other places, it's here. And if you look, actually, Ari, I put some stuff on the resource doc that I'm about to describe, if you could put it on the website. The Supervisor Batez put together, compiled some charts that demonstrate, you know, exactly the level of detail. I think we're at about 1.7 new cases, active cases per day, and we were at 1.8 in the spring. So that's just one way of demonstrating that numerically we're in the second wave. Decidedly, and the county executive has asked us as local leaders to amplify and get out this message, especially in light of the holidays coming. So people shouldn't be doing anything that is really super unnecessary right now. Stay home as much as you can and reduce exposure as much as you can. So we can get this thing in check again. We knew this was coming, but to know it is one thing, and then to actually be living in it and having to respond is a whole nother thing.
Hey, KT, I was going to ask, do you think there's anything that we learned from the springtime? So our messaging is different now that we should be, or we are relaying to our community?
Well, we definitely launched the We Not Me campaign. I think late, you know, that didn't happen until we were doing back to school. And actually, do I have any in arm's length? We still have a lot of signage for the We Not Me campaign promoting social distancing. There's an adorable one with the hawk with his mask on. There's a really great one about how to wear a mask properly and washing hands and all of the things. And we have laminated and not laminated. So if there's any businesses or locations that want signage, just email me at ktobin@villageofnewpaltz.org. So I would say that's a big thing, but in general, it's, you know, wear a mask, wash your hands all the time. It's 10 feet, not 10 feet, I'm sorry, 6 feet. But what I was really thinking of was the 10 person rule. So no gatherings of more than 10 people. There was some new guidance last week about gyms and restaurants closing at 10. Anybody think I'm forgetting any of the things?
Just one thing that the county exec was sort of asking people to imagine was imagine what you were doing in March and April and try to put yourself back then and do the types of activities that help keep the numbers down.
Hunker down. We're going to hibernate. Those of us that can, and thank you to those of you that have to leave your house and work for the rest of us. Abundant thanks.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
I do want to add one thing, if I can, just from the county call today. One of the big questions that the town supervisors were asking is what is the responsibility of local municipalities regarding enforcement of the 10-person gathering? And it's basically we have the same resources that we've had this whole time. The pause complaint portal is still active and open. If you see something that you would like to report, you can report it there. The link is on the village website. It has been this whole time. And those go through the state, go through the county, and go to local municipalities as well. So that's just something everybody should be aware of it also.
Thanks, Ari. And, as we've been doing all along, we've been doing a, first attempt warning or first instance warning approach to things, because whether it's Corey in the building department or the police, we find that if people are non-compliant, a short conversation usually turns into compliance. Obviously, things would be different if there was sort of a chronic pattern of violation, but we've been in an educational give a second chance, just first have a conversation before we go down sort of police punitive routes. And that's been successful thus far. But thank you also for bringing up the portal that I think you put on the website again, and I meant to put on social media and I didn't, so I'll do that later.
Okay. So Alex, do you want to do the Trans Day of Remembrance as an announcement or during the business agenda?
Whatever works.
Let's do it now.
Okay. Should I read the resolution or the list?
The resolution.
Okay. Let me make it a little bit bigger. All right. So we just like some quick background. We passed pretty much the same resolution for the first time ever last year on November 20th, 2019. And I think it's really important to, keep this up, especially in these times. So basically, it's a resolution of the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees memorializing the designation of November 20th, 2020 as Transgender Day of Remembrance and the month of November as Transgender Awareness Month. Whereas Transgender Day of Remembrance was founded by transgender advocate Gwendolyn Ann Smith as a vigil to honor her memory of Rita Hester, a transgender woman who was killed in 1998. The vigil commemorated all the transgender people lost to violence that year and began an important memorial that has become the annual Transgender Day of Remembrance. And whereas Transgender Day of Remembrance is an annual observance on November 20th, which is this Friday, that honors the memory of the transgender people whose lives were lost in acts of anti-transgender violence that year. And whereas there were, and I need to get the exact number of global reported murders of trans and gender diverse people between November 1st, 2019 and November 1st, 2020, whereas 55 of those reported murders of trans and gender diverse folks in the past year were in the United States alone, and their names are Angel Unique, Brooklyn Deshuna, Sarah Blackwood, who was killed. Actually, I just wanted to note on October 11th, which is recognized as National Coming Out Day, so that hurts a lot. Felicia Harris, Michelle Michelin Ramos Vargas, Mia Green, Arian Burnett, Gia Valentina Romulado Rodriguez, Isabella Mia Lofton, Ellie Shea, Leah Rayshawn Day, who I wanted to make a special note of, who was a 28-year-old Black transgender woman who died in a county jail in Cleveland, Ohio in August. Shelly Lynn Rose, Key Sam, Asia Raquel Roan Spears, also known as Rocky Roan, Keisha Hardy, Tiffany Harris, also known as Dior H. Ova, Marilyn Monroe Cazares, Angela Martinez Gomez, Summer Taylor, Bree Black, Jackie Peters, Drea McCarty, Mercy Mack, Tatiana Hall, Frayla Stone, Brian Egypt or Eagle Powers, Dominique Remy Fells, Raya Milton, name unknown. This is somebody who was a transgender person who was murdered in Chicago, who was somewhere between the age of 16 and 20. They were killed on June 6th, and investigations are still ongoing to even identify them. Selena Reyes Hernandez, Tony McDade, Jane Thompson, Kelly J. O'Regan, Nina Pop, Serena Angelique Velasquez Ramos, Leila Palaces Sanchez, Johanna Metzger, Henrietta Robinson, Ashley Moore, Lorena Borjas, Lexi Ebony Sutton, Monica Diamond, John Scott DeVore, also known as Scotland Kelly DeVore, Yempi Mendez Arocho, Nulisa Luciana Ruiz, Camila Maria Concepcion, Alex McCrae, Dustin Parker, Mia Penny, Yahira Nesby, Alice Carter, also known as Baby Alice, Angel Rose Garcia, and Nikki Kuhnhausen. Whereas additionally, a 2015 US transgender report released in 2017 writes that in New York State, 18% of trans people were unemployed and 37% were living in poverty. 27% have experienced homelessness at some point in their lives. 21% experienced some form of housing discrimination in the past year. 27% did not see a doctor when they needed to for fear of being mistreated. 58% would feel uncomfortable asking for police help when needed. And 74% that at some time in their K through 12 education, transgender people experience some form of mistreatment, ranging from verbal harassment to physical and sexual assault. And therefore, be it resolved that the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees on this date, November 18th, 2020, joins communities around the world in a moment of remembrance of transgender and gender nonconforming lives lost in 2020. And be it further resolved that the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees wishes to help raise the visibility of transgender people and illuminate the issues the trans community faces by reaffirming our declaration of November as Transgender Awareness Month. And be it further resolved that we direct the clerk to send a copy of this resolution to all of our leaders above us. Thanks so much for letting me have a moment and say all their names.
I'd like to second, or is that your motion that we approve this resolution, Alex?
Yes, I motion accordingly.
I'd like to second Alex's motion to approve this resolution.
One second, Tim. I'm wondering if we could have that moment to pause before we vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And Alex, thanks again, as you did last year and in the past, for putting this resolution together and updating it with the names. I think it's an important and powerful way to remember these individuals.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
So I motion that we open our short-term rental law. Someone want to second that?
Second.
Okay, so we received a few letters in response to this proposed legislation. And I can quickly summarize the concept of the short-term rental law. The idea is to not prohibit short-term rentals in the village of New Paltz, but just have a way to manage where they end up. And our approach, we actually came up with this idea some time ago, and we've been working on this. And during that time, we saw that the city of Springfield in Massachusetts was basically doing exactly what we're doing. But, you know, communities like ours, you know, we have certain zoned areas for residential and for commercial. And our thinking is, if there's a investment property that's exclusively for Airbnbs, more like a bed and breakfast or a hotel, it would be in a commercial zone. And then residential zones would be reserved for properties where, you know, it's still primarily for full-time residents, whether they are owners or renters, long-term renters. But then individuals would still have the option to go ahead and use a short-term rental service like Airbnb or, you know, VRB, whatever it stands for. If individuals were to go on vacation or take, you know, extended work trips, so that they could earn some money from their property. So the way the law works is, as long as it is your primary residence for 9 months per year or longer, than for 3 months per year or less, it could be rented out as a short-term rental if it's in one of our residentially zoned districts. So that's basically the you know, 60,000 foot view of the proposed law. Does anyone want to add anything? Did I summarize it accurately? So we received, I'm sorry, go ahead, KT.
Took me a while. I just wanted to reiterate that we, you know, our approach to this has been that we know one size doesn't fit all. And we differentiate greatly people who are owners in the community and community members over outside investors that are really just doing this and causing the ripple effect of inflationary effects on housing costs, which are already, you know, we're in the county with the highest sales in the whole country. So plus we just, you know, we're in a housing crisis before the pandemic, and now it's on steroids. So I just want to reiterate that we wanted to make sure that people who do this, you know, like the single moms I know that do it, so that they can pay their mortgage, right, are very different than some, you know, buddy on a computer far away buying something from far away, just to have a lot of profit made in that way from a distance without any other kind of investment in the community. So that's why we differentiated it in this way. So it's a nuanced approach, and an approach that looks at things that in a way that's not one size fits all. And I also, I get questions all the time about, what is the extent of our housing crisis, and our I think that one of my go-to resources is the Economic Policy Institute, and they have this great economic costs and benefits of Airbnb, which is a really great summary that I encourage anybody that really wants to know, what is the dynamics here at play, and what we're trying to do in order to really throw everything that we can at our housing crisis. We have so many different things in our toolkit, right? We have our affordable housing board, and all the different things that we try to do, zoning differently. But this is one, I think, very defensible way to affect the cost of housing in our community.
I think there are other impacts and consequences. The rental is certainly very important, but when you create communities that are heavily being home shared, you lose your full-time population in a community like the Village of New Paltz, which relies quite a bit on volunteers to help in the fire department, the rescue squad, serve on our committees and boards. You lose that population because you have a transient population. Also, businesses too can suffer because business then is usually Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and you've lost your Sunday through Thursday crowd that typically comes into a restaurant during midweek. So there are also economic impacts to businesses. Those are just a couple of additional thoughts behind this.
Yeah, Bill, I think you summarized why we think this is an important law to consider. I think a healthy, balanced community includes full-time residents, homeowners, renters, young professionals, long-time residents, senior citizens, and visitors who would be using the likes of Airbnb properties or short-term rental properties. We want all of the above. And I think what we're doing is just trying to, create a framework where, all the various interests and needs can exist. And, I wholeheartedly think that the point you raised about the need for volunteers to serve on boards and commissions and, help with the fire department or the rescue squad, there's the New Paltz in particular is incredibly dependent on the numerous volunteers, and without that sense of community, without some sort of safety net to make sure that we're ensuring that full-time residents can live here again, whether they're homeowners or renters, long-term renters, that's the distinction that we're making. And it can't just be a community where absentee investors or landlords gobble up single family homes and turn them into essentially mini hotels. That would, gut our community's character. And, a couple of the letters or public comments we had were asking about, whether this is a critical need or, why we're considering this at this time. And I think, we're addressing that with our comments now. Michelle, did you want to add anything that we didn't cover?
Yeah, I just, the housing crisis really is, for me, a big point to this, and making sure that residents who want to live here are able to afford homes, are able to afford rentals, and there isn't a housing shortage, which we're already experiencing. So I think this protects that, and like you said, also offers, we still have the balance of all the different types of folks who are going to live in our area or rent or own, or even be full-time residents and can still Airbnb here and there, but not people who are not invested in the community, which is really important. So.
Right. So I feel like Kristen Missick and Taylor Davis, their comments were along the lines of like, why are you guys considering this proposed legislation now? So I feel like we've answered that question. And then Dina Du Bois.
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
So like, I don't have any numbers for in the pandemic, but before pandemic times, including like even in February, there's been just so many different little studies that show like even a small increase in Airbnb and VRBO type stock in a community increases rents across the board, different percentages. So I can only imagine what it's like now. And then the other thing is, even in the very beginning of the inception of Airbnb, we saw in like San Francisco, there was a study done. So it's really old, but basically there's a correlation between anytime you have an increase in Airbnb type stock in a community, you see more like illegal evictions. And I hesitate using that term because eviction is a legal term. That means going through the courts. It's a very long process, but it's what we're familiar with. Maybe like a better word would be expulsions. But when landlords find weird ways to, and scary and illegal and awful ways to make tenants leave either on their own accord or, basically kick them out. So that they can flip it into like an Airbnb type thing. So in this time where housing is also a form of healthcare for many people in our community, that it does have such a high percentage of households who rent. That's the last thing we need is seeing that happen.
And I just want to add too to the question of why are we working on this now? And I mean, I feel with any of the items on our agenda, it's kind of like, why not now? We can work on more than one item at a time. That's the way it has to be done. If we only choose one item and only focus on that to completion, then, we would never get things done in local government. So, I think it's important for the public to remember of the many different balls in the air we have going on at any one particular time to, and each are at different stages of completion or a solution. So, so I would just like to add that.
And Tim, just and group and anyone else, the other thing which drove this, the importance of this was attending a house fire outside of our community in Esopus, where a Airbnb guest died in the fire as a result of not knowing where the exits were. And this law will help, perhaps help prevent such a thing happening again, because we'll have inspections of the premises and the same type of standards that we have for rental properties.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you're emphasizing that important point, Bill. So currently, even before this law, if anyone were to use their house as a short-term rental, it's supposed to be inspected annually by our building department. So I feel like with this law, what we're doing is just re-emphasizing the importance of making sure that properties are inspected to make sure that they're safe. And I think another thing that we need to discuss as a board is this concept of the historic district, because it seemed like several years ago, before any of us were on the village board, there was an issue with a very nice house on Huguenot Street that was being used as a short-term rental property. And the response at that time was to prohibit short-term rentals in the entire H district, the historic district. I would be willing to remove that law from our code if we thought it was, because I think if you live in the H district, and to KT's point earlier, is as long as you're a permanent resident and you go on vacation and you want to rent your property in the most responsible way and, having it been inspected for safety, I would be comfortable. And this way, all residential districts have this rule. So curious what the rest of you think.
I'm so glad you brought that up, and I'm all for it. I remember that well, even though I wasn't on the board. I remember it well. It was early Airbnb type stuff.
Yeah, that was definitely one of those situations where it seemed like someone purchased a house that was beautiful, and they felt that, here's a great way to make some money. I'm going to take this beautiful single family home and turn it into a mini hotel. And, I'm going to rent it out every single weekend. And, it's just a very different dynamic versus a residential neighborhood that's primarily a permanent, used as a permanent residence, and then it's rented out periodically up to 3 months a year.
Yeah, very disruptive and obvious to the people who live there.
Yeah,
What were you going to say, Bill?
that question came up at the HBC meeting on Monday, because apparently they had a hand in getting that going and moved into law with former Mayor Jason West. And thank you. I thought of that. I thought something like that. We had something in the books, but I couldn't find it via Eco 360. But I sort of like your idea of let's revisit that and perhaps drop that particular sentence from the law.
Right, because in our draft of this law, we're clearly listing the residentially zoned districts, which include R1, R2, R3, NBR, and H. And then we're making the distinction between them and the commercially zoned districts, which are B1, B2, Gateway, and PB.
Sorry. I'm like I like this idea a lot. And I'm glad you brought it up because I had forgotten that I had a question actually about that section. It's like 9, I think, in 212.13. It's just like one sentence about short-term rentals being prohibited in District H. So I'm into it. Is that like a different public hearing we'd have to do to like rescind that whole thing, I think?
Yep,
Sorry,
that would be a separate initiative, because this law would not be, we would not need to change our draft of this law.
Okay, cool. Thank you for answering the question I didn't ask very well.
He's just asking for us to define short term.
I think it's in there.
It's in the law, which the link is on the agenda.
The definition is actually in the law, short-term rental, a dwelling unit that is rented in whole or in part to any person or entity for a period of less than 29 consecutive nights. And I think that's borrowed from state law too. I don't think that we're arbitrarily making this up. I think long-term is 30 or more and short-term is less than 30.
Yeah, I think you're right, Tim.
So I think we should keep the public hearing open. I'm grateful for the comments that we got because it made us make our case. And maybe if we didn't hear anybody, we might have not even talked about it. So thank you for submitting questions and comments because they always spoke discussion.
Yeah, I think this is one of those proposed laws that I would rather err on the side of keeping the public hearing open longer. I will compose a letter for us to sign on to as a board, just to submit it to the newspaper for the Friday deadline, just to, in addition to sharing it on social media. So, we'll do, in addition to, publicizing that the public hearing is open, we can reach out to the community in other ways as well. And then we did receive another public comment from Nathan Tableman from Pencil Hill Road, and his suggestion was don't do this law, but just require landlords to rent for 366 days. So I guess he was thinking about something along the lines of just getting rid of, like, no one could rent for less than a year. You could only rent for a year and 1 day. The problem with that is we're not allowed to dictate third-party contracts. So even
It
if,
also doesn't maximize the use of our housing stock. Like there's snowbirds that live at Southside in the summer and the students live there in the winter. And there's other examples of that, you know, throughout the community. So I don't see the point of doing that.
yeah, and I feel like we actually want short-term rentals. We want people to have the flexibility to use a short-term rental app at times. We just don't want investors to gobble up properties in residentially zoned neighborhoods. You know, that's what we're trying to do with this law. We're not trying to say that we don't like short-term rentals in general. We don't want you know, a concentration of them where they're mini hotels in residential neighborhoods. Okay, so the public hearing remains open. Let's move on. We have well, is there anyone here who wanted to make a comment about this?
Taylor was here, but he had sent an email saying that he couldn't make it, and there is nothing on the YouTube live chat. So maybe Taylor will come next time now that the hearing has been kept open, so we can let him know.
Right, and then we have a comment from Misha. It says you need to define short term. At the beginning of the discussion, Tim mentioned less than 3 months if you go away for that period, but I think people more think in terms of 2 to 5 or so days anytime during the year, not lumped together in 1 3-month period. Yeah, this law would allow people to rent their house out for 2 to 5 days at a time, as long as they don't do it for more than a total of, as long as they live in the house for 9 months or more during the year. So, you know, part of this too is like these things, like, you know, we also included in the law how you quote unquote prove to the building department that you're a permanent resident. Like, you know, we don't have a lie detector. You know, we're asking you to provide utility bills, and, you know, at the end of the day, it'll probably be a smell test, and your neighbors will also know whether you actually live in the house or not, and that you're not an investor who lives somewhere else. So there, you know, some of this stuff is not completely foolproof, but we think we wrote a law that makes a decent amount of sense.
Yeah, and I encourage anyone, don't go by, you know, abstract. The village is looking at a short-term rental law. Go to the law and read the law, because these nuances are all addressed in the law. So and
We did just get to, sorry, Katie, go on.
That's fine. Just wanted to make sure everybody knew that they could just go to the website and see what the actual law looks like, and check out the particulars.
It's not overly complicated either.
Yeah. And you know, I compared our law to the city of Springfield's law, and I actually like the way we wrote ours better. Where are you going to add, Ari? We got a couple of comments.
We just got 2 comments. Yeah, one from Dina Dubois. Please comment on my letter about 65 Huguenot Street, and one from Andy Maxwell. Wouldn't that exclude the snowbirds?
Well, I think we did respond to Dina's comment, because she asked if she would be able to go away for 1, 2, 3, or 4 months a year. Yeah, you can definitely rent out your place for up to 3 months a year. 4 months would not be permitted based on how the law is currently written.
And I don't think it would exclude the snowbirds, because that's usually the month breakdown in that.
Right. I mean, and if someone's in a situation where
just Airbnb-ing, you know. Like,
yeah, it wouldn't exclude the snowbirds, because what you can easily do is sublet your place for a total of 4 months. Like if someone lives in a place for more than 3 months, they're not a short-term renter.
I guess an important nuance to point out in this context is we don't say homeowner, we say primary resident or something like that too, right? Like we changed that language to make
Yeah, again,
sure.
because we don't want to get involved in people's business. If the landlord wants to allow a tenant to sublet, that's on their third party contract. But maybe we could add something to make it more clear about that snowbird concept. But I was under the impression that snowbirds were here for 3 months and not 4 months. But maybe we could even ask, like, generally, how does that ebb and flow work, like at Windsor Terrace or Southside? You know, maybe
Yeah,
we're,
that's what I was gonna say. Maybe that's a little bit more research we could do just to make
Well,
sure.
it's when the students aren't here. So that's why I thought it was June, July, August.
me too. I thought it was 3 months. That's why we wrote the law the way we wrote it.
I thought so also, but
Dina had 2 more comments specifically about transient visitors, and please see my letter about use of caravan for family members.
Yeah, she needs to go to the building department and ask whether the build, you know, that's not about short term, that's about site plan and whether a structure is considered safe and permitted. That's a building department question. And transient visitors, like if, you know, your uncle is visiting, yeah, they're allowed to, you know, we don't care if people visit as long as you have fewer than 10 people in your house during the global pandemic, that's fine. Anything else?
And just so you know, Dina, we can see it. It's actually linked right on the agenda, so anyone can see it because it's now part of the record.
Yeah, Dina, your letter is here. We all read it before the meeting. We saw the picture of that caravan that you were interested in putting on your property. Okay, do we have anything else? Oh, here's a question. Does the town also have a similar law? I do not believe they do, and I do not believe that they're considering one.
Although they are, I mean, they've been saying this for a while. Sorry, friends, but it's true. Of doing affordable housing law and also a rental registry. And I think there is some interest in over there. They want to do a whole housing package. So I hope I was allowed to say that out loud now that I said it out loud. So there you go. So maybe ask. Not currently. Possibly.
They can adopt our law.
This one? The
Sure.
short, yeah, the affordable housing one is a little more complicated.
The STR.
Okay, so our public comment our public hearing for this proposed legislation remains open. So let's move on to public comment. We have a public comment from Karen Gavin about stop sign.
Isn't this part of the conversation? Isn't the town project? I don't even know.
It says, I'm writing to request the village board to place a stop sign on the southwest corner of the intersection North Oakwood Terrace and Henry W. I have lived at the northeast corner of the intersection for 40 years. So this would be, because this is one of the few intersections on Henry W that does not have a stop sign. Is this as you're going up the hill?
Yeah, it's the one that when you're going up, it doesn't, but when you're going down, it does, right?
Right, that's right. It's a very difficult spot to put a stop sign because of the angle of the road. It's very
Gonna
steep.
call it a swoop because it kind of like, it's a little
Yeah.
hill thingy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Might this also be addressed when the town is looking at their
That's
their
what I was thinking.
shared bicycle and pedestrian path on the south side of Henry W?
Yeah.
So we can touch base with the planning firm that's working on that project and with the town supervisor and see what they think about this intersection. Why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Okay, did we get any other public comments?
One more, yes, from Tom Olson. I like the direction of nuanced thinking about this topic. We do not want to use a blunt instrument. Letter to follow.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, so we have our business agenda, and I know Misha's been waiting patiently. We were going to chat with her about her interest in serving as an alternate on the village planning board. Do we want to let Misha in to the conversation?
Okay.
Hi, Misha.
All right.
Hi, Misha.
Hello.
So tell us about your interest in volunteering on the village
Well,
planning board.
I have more or less written all that in the letter which I sent 3 weeks ago. I was thinking about this for quite a long time because there are things that I don't like quite happening the way they are happening. And I thought maybe if I could be on the board, I can present my views and opinions more than if I just write a letter to the paper, which I do a lot. But what really made me to express the interest was 5456 Elting Avenue, in regard to which I wrote a comment, or what is it that we did to the planning board, and John thought that it was a very passionate letter, and therefore he would like to have a passionate person on the board. So I decided, okay, I'll go ahead with it. Now, shortly after I wrote the letter, I think it was the day after or so, there was the Historic Preservation Commission hearing. And I thought, okay, let me listen to that. And then I listened to another one on Monday. And then yesterday, I listened to the village planning board again. And I realized that there really seems to be a necessity for these two boards cooperate, commission and a board, to cooperate a little bit. Because I think that if they did cooperate, there would be probably less visual offense created over the years.
Right. So one thing that we've been working on is, so the planning board's responsibility is to look at section 212 of our code regarding zoning, and they look at applicants' land use applications, and they see whether something could be permitted based on the zoning codes. And then historic preservation has a more specific mandate and a limited mandate right now, where they look at historically designated homes throughout the village, and then also anything related to Huguenot Street. And something that we've been working on is having a design review process, which would involve members of the Historic Preservation Commission to look at projects across the village. So I think exactly what you're describing is something that we've been working on. It's a little bit more complicated than one might imagine, and we were looking at it more carefully during the spring and doing it in some early video conferencing calls. I think we've been treading a little bit more lightly because we want to get the language handled correctly and we want to make sure that the community has numerous chances to comment on, this kind of more involved process. So, we're doing, I think, what you're hoping for and what you just described.
Yes, I actually was in contact with Tom also, and we talked about this a lot, and he said exactly what you just said, that yes, they did try to come together. And then of course the pandemic came and it didn't get anywhere. And he mentioned one interesting thing that because he was also aware of how opposed we people on Elting Avenue were to what's happening across my house, that eventually they requested of Stephens, but of course it was after the village board gave the approval. They requested from Stephens his plans for the house that he wants to build.
Yeah, Misha. Okay,
and so far,
let's back up. Let's back up. So, Mr. Steffens had an application before the planning board to construct a house on Elting Avenue, the same avenue that I live on, you live on. People, were paying close attention to what Rich Steffens wanted to build on this third lot that he owns. So this design review process has not been codified yet, as I just described. So what I did was I asked Rich Steffens if he would voluntarily provide his architectural plans to the members of the HPC, so that they could hopefully help provide him with some feedback about what he wants to construct and what it might end up looking like. And Mr. Steffens' response is, I'm working on the architectural plans. Once they are ready, I will take time and meet with that board. And we've done this not just with Mr. Steffens, but with other applicants who want to build stuff, and we've explained it to them. We have not codified this process yet. If you would voluntarily meet, we think that would be great, because we think we have strong members on that board who could provide you with useful counsel. And Mr. Steffens seems at this point very willing to meet with them. He, like lots of things, he's still waiting for his architect complete plans. He doesn't want to meet with the HPC until he has something to show them.
Okay, that's fine. But I mean, this is, I mentioned it as a specific example, but I think that if this can be eventually instituted after there is a lot more discussions and so on, I think it would be very useful for the village and for various designs. And I thought that, so for instance, listening to the planning board yesterday, there is so much going on and all over the place. And it just would be very interesting to be able to be involved in that a little bit more and provide input, thoughts, ideas, and maybe even should I become, even as the alternate on the board, maybe act a little bit as a contact between the preservation board and the planning board. But that's, neither here nor there. So I am interested, I am willing to work. And I think it's in your, you decide. It's interesting to me that you decide, not the planning board decides, but it's fine. Just, let me know whatever you decide, and I will behave accordingly, maybe writing more letters.
Does anyone have some questions for Misha right now?
I just comment, Misha. I work with both the HPC and the planning board, and the cross-pollination that's happening seems to be increasing between the two entities. And I'm encouraged by the steps that are being taken. They're small steps, but I'm encouraged by their communication and their interest and their dedication to both of their respective responsibilities.
Good. That's good. Yes, definitely. It's good. And actually from what I was hearing yesterday, they talked about this. And I think there was a support for this idea on the part of all of the members.
Right. Anyone else want to share anything? Ask a question? I was just going to add that I think it's important to stay mindful of the role of a planning board member is to use the code and to see whether applications are work as far as the code. Like the code is very particular. If the lot is size X, then you can have a building that's size Y, and the height can be this, and the number of bedrooms can be that. And it's really like you have to dig into the code and to see what's there and to make sure that the project is in accordance with the existing code.
Yes, I think
it's really important that members, it's like, we always enter a room with a personal bias, but like if you like or dislike a project, it's, that really needs to be kept at the door, because the function of the board members is to only look at things through whether it's code compliant. So your example of, Mr. Steffen's house on Elting, I feel like folks felt that the lot was small, but it was a 55 or a 50-foot wide lot. And there are probably 100, 200 lots that width across the village. There's nothing unusually small about a lot of that size. So I think it'd be hard for a planning board to vote against a project if the code says that it's allowed.
Well, okay, I'm very much aware of that really the board's hands are pretty much tied because they have to go by the code. They have to pay attention to safety. They have to be sure that they comply with the rules and regulations. But I don't know what the mandate, how the mandate was created, but maybe there could be a consideration of changing some of it in the mandate and include into it, okay, you want to build something here. Sure, it's your place, it's your money, but would it also in some ways benefit the community? Would it fit into the community? I don't think that would be completely adding those criteria. I don't think that it would be completely undermining the other needs which the planning board has to be looking at, the safety and the codes and so on.
Well, so, I mean, it just needs to be defensible in court, right? Like if you want to make a suggestion in terms of how code could be read in terms of, does this project contribute to the community? We would need to be able to measure that. That's the challenge with, conceptual, what I think what you're suggesting. So if you have ideas on how we could codify that, I think we're all open, because we want to make sure that New Paltz remains New Paltz, and it's a strong, healthy community that's is mindful of our past and is excited about where we're headed in the future. So if you have ideas, let us know.
But
we're gonna just.
I know you want to wrap this, but there is a space for this in the seeker process. It's not like this isn't a thing that doesn't happen. It's 100% true what you said, Tim, but it's also true that at least in the seeker process, that there is conversations about community character, and there is in our master plan very vague design standards that say you need to align with what's already existing, and a little bit more than that. So I just wanted to point out that it is part of the terrain. It's just which doesn't take away from what you said, because the nuts and bolts of it is what is in the zoning code.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Misha.
Thank you.
Thanks, Misha.
Thank you. Out, I'm going out.
Okay, buenas noches. Do we want to have this discussion of village board liaison alternates for committees and commissions, or you want to wait and do that another time? Does someone have like a fresh idea they want to share tonight?
I brought that up. The idea is that I think we could serve our committees and boards a bit better if there were an alternate assigned in case somebody can't make it, and also it would be helpful, I think, to the trustees and anyone else that, due to our schedules that are quite crazy and busy, particularly in the evening, if someone can't make a meeting, that there's a backup to possibly attend. And I think that might be a good addition to what we do.
So I kind of already do this informally, and it occurs to me, instead of locking one person in, maybe we could put it in our board procedure and protocol that, you know, if you can't go to your thing, you get another board member to go for you, instead of locking in an alternate. Because usually, I mean, not usually, not all of it. Some of it's substantive that we decide what liaisons we have, but sometimes it's just like who's available on a particular night, right? So we might be setting ourselves up to have, I bet if we all threw our weeks at each other, we might have trouble even finding two people. Anyway, you get my point. So I would suggest we put it in the board procedures doc and just say that it would be our practice, if absent, to get a backup.
The only thing drawback that I see to that is you have to have some familiarity with what's going on and some sort of history with the committee or board. So it couldn't be so random, I guess.
As you all know, I have issues often with my attendance of the Shade Tree Commission because of an ongoing other commitment that I have. And then I also, my full-time job is sometimes up in the air, and sometimes I get booked for something that is the same evening as something. I've even had to have missed one of these meetings because of being booked on the same evening. So I mean, there was some concern by the Shade Tree Commission that because I had missed meetings, I feel, I spoke to them and made sure that they knew I was always available to them. But, I want to be able to have them feel they're heard and their needs met as well. But I do have this ongoing conflict. But I am going tomorrow.
I don't know, maybe let's noodle on it.
Yeah.
We have a lot of more things to talk about.
Yeah, I want to think about it a little bit more, because I like KT's suggestion, and I also like and appreciate what Bill said. So I wouldn't be able to make any sort of decision without really kind of thinking about it and looking at the calendar again.
Okay, so let's chew on it as you suggested, and we'll come back to this idea. So we have a tree dedication for May 22nd next year at 2 p.m. Someone want to fill us in?
Yeah, the Shade Tree Commission wants to have an official memorial for Sally Rhodes, and the tree would be just, I mean, hopefully, I don't know what the state of COVID is going to be at that time, May 22nd, but it would be a tree dedication on that Saturday to where, you know, people will gather and say some words, and hopefully Shade Tree is tomorrow, so hopefully I'll be able to let them know that we can do that, and maybe we can put a caveat that will just, you know, COVID measures will be in place if COVID is still a thing on May 22nd.
I'll mark my calendar now.
Do we need to do anything besides marking calendars? Was the Shade Tree Commission asking that we recognize that this is going to happen?
Yes, just simply that. Mm-hmm.
Do you want to make that motion, and we'll?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion that we have, oh, my thing just disappeared. On May 22nd, 2021 at 2 p.m., there will be a tree dedication in honor of Sally Rhodes for all her amazing work that she has done to make our community better. And the Shade Tree Commission is heralding that tree dedication. So I make a motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Shade Tree Commission and Michelle.
Sure.
Okay, next item, workplace safety plan. Is this Ari's handiwork?
This is my handiwork. I put everything in. It's not super different from what we already have in place. There's kind of two main differences. One is that it more actively empowers, and I hope, can everybody see that all of those are suggestions in there? I know there was some back and forth regarding whether or not people could see that actually. Yes, thumbs up. All right, yes. I'm just going to keep going then. Thank you. So the two main things, one is empowering the department heads in a stronger way to create a schedule, you know, and saying that it should be staggered or it should be rotating, but, you know, leaving them, giving them more power to do that, where this was it was a little bit more prescriptive before. And the second is being a little bit more specific. Well, I guess there's three things. The second is being more specific on like what to do if you are experiencing any of the following things, like having symptoms or maybe having contact, like a possible exposure without it being a definite exposure. And then there's the third thing is that I created, borrowed from SUNY Paltz, a lot of these things, is borrowed a self-screening form. And so the self-screening form would be a daily thing that everybody who's coming to Village Hall in any capacity, you know, would fill out. And so, because we have been supposed to have been logging our, you know, having some kind of evidence that people have been actually taking their temperatures each morning and doing that kind of check. And I created a spreadsheet, but I don't think we ever truly implemented it. We were kind of more on the honor system. And this is something where if we implement this, it creates more of that like affirmation where I am truly telling everybody that I took my temperature and I have less than 100°F. And, you know, I'm not experiencing any of these symptoms, and really just going through it in a more thoughtful way instead of something where you could possibly forget. And if somebody didn't do it on a certain day, you know, that will show up because the dates are all there. And we'll just know that. I don't know exactly who should be monitoring it, if it's each department head. I didn't put that into this, but those are the main three things that are changing. And this has already been in place. Most of this is already here, and already things that we've been doing. It's not anything brand new except for those three items.
I like the use of the form. You know, I make forms for myself all the time. So I actually update spreadsheets, you know, so I think that's a cool addition. It's just it's like so hard, you know, all the different layers of accountability during these times, you know, because it's not only like accountability, like, you know, to yourself, you know, and your own family, but it's also like in, you know, in these lines of work, it's like accountability to the greater community in ways that I don't think we even like know what that might look like besides what it does, you know? So I don't know, whatever makes it easier for people to, you know, check all the boxes and like clarifies the process sounds good to me.
Thanks for your work on this, Ari. And the check-in thing, I mean, I do it every day that I go into campus, which I haven't done lately. But I will tomorrow. And it's a habit you get into. It's really easy.
Yeah, I think it really is about creating that habit, which, you know, just having like a spreadsheet that needs to have an input is just like not as easy as having like a very direct form. You know, and also that way nobody will ever accidentally delete our spreadsheet or things like that. You know, they just fill out the form. Not that we couldn't retrieve it with Google, I mean, we definitely could, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys want to like go through this at all, but one of the things I did consider, and I'll just let you know, is in terms of the union. And I didn't want to do anything within this that wasn't already pre-discussed. You know, like the workplace travel, the return to work post travel policy that was, you know, run by the union and approved. This is definitely still within that that framework. So I didn't want there to be any, you know, issues with that. So I didn't get into too many more details than what we already had. And just to be clear, this is like totally different from our pandemic operations plan. This is really like something that we need like now through the winter, and the pandemic operations plan that Governor Cuomo has mandated is like a totally different thing that we're going to be working on a larger scale. Hopefully with the town and the school district and SUNY, and just like getting all of those entities together the way we would for any emergency preparedness plan.
Well, thanks for putting this together. This looks like a useful.
Do we need to formally approve, Ari?
I would say yes, you do. And you know, if you have any issues with any of my suggested changes, otherwise I'll accept all of them now. Or do you want to be able to look at that for longer?
I'm good.
Yeah, this looks good. I motion that we accept this online document.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Ari.
Thank you all.
Okay, next up, set a public hearing to review the performance and status of activities and to identify future community development activities for the Small Cities CDBG program. Do we need Mark to do this, or can we just?
Mark will be here with us for the actual public hearing.
Okay, so what
date?
date?
It's going to be Wednesday, December 9th at 7 p.m.
Okay, I motion that we set up a public hearing for the date you just said.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the next item on our business agenda is memo. It's from Blue. He would like the board's permission to immediately amend the Public Works street opening permit application fees for new and replacement water meters. The cost of water meters has increased due to the meters being used in cellular and the increase in cost of materials. Increase as follows: 3/4 inch hookup from $370 to $705. 1 inch hookup from $510 to $900. Water meter replacement, 3/4 inch meter from $180 to $420. 1 inch meter from $270 to $575. I motion that we go ahead and increase the fees per Mr. Terwilliger's memo. And I bet you we probably should have done this even before tonight.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The town, so have we received a formal request from the town, Ari? Where
So we actually haven't. I put this on the agenda in anticipation of it. And then I didn't remove it because I figured, well, we may as well just kind of make it known that this is coming down the line to the board. But we didn't actually get anything from them.
Right. So, okay. So let's just keep this on the agenda for the next meeting, but we're going to anticipate getting a petition from the town so that the new building for courts and police will be included in Water District number 1, so we can officially provide that property with municipal water. And their engineer has estimated that they would need 908 gallons per day. So that's how much use they anticipate the new buildings consuming. So we'll wait for that petition. The next is we have an individual who could take on the role as temporary parking enforcement officer. We would use them on Thursdays and Fridays. Currently, the thinking is we'll use them from 12:30 to 5:30 for a total of 10 hours. This is a temp position. This is just a concept. So we have an application. This individual was screened by our treasurer, Nancy, and our fire chief, Corey. He is a volunteer firefighter who lives here in the village. Can someone grab the email where we included it, where we have his application?
Yeah.
Bill, do you know his name? He's a young.
I'm sorry, I don't. Sorry.
I'm forwarding it to all of you right now.
Is this something we should be talking exec?
I'm comfortable just going ahead and
Okay.
motioning that we bring this person on board to handle this temporary role. Oh, his name is Choi Woo Young. And he's, as I mentioned, a volunteer firefighter. So technically, he is already an employee of the village, and
he recently joined a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and the feedback is that he seems like a great fit for the fire department, and seems like someone who we could certainly try out on a temporary basis in the parking enforcement officer position that we're seeing whether it makes sense to add to.
Sounds good.
Do you? Okay. So my motion is to hire this individual at $17 per hour for approximately 10 hours per week.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 What does this say? Okay, so we had the non-contractual village staff. We had in our budget pre-COVID some raises that we were holding off on. We didn't enact them in June because we were hitting hitting the brakes on spending money. I think it would be prudent to continue to hold off on realizing these raises at this time, unless you guys think otherwise. Let's open it up for discussion.
I agree.
Do we want to set a date to revisit it, or do we just want to revisit it for the next budget year. You know, we're gonna start working on the budget again in a few months.
I don't know. What do you think, Tim?
I think we should wait until the next budget cycle.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I'm for that too.
That makes sense to me.
Okay, so I'm gonna motion that we officially continue to hit pause on not realizing these staff salary increases, and we'll be taking a look again at whether to include these raises when we're opening up the books for the next budget cycle for fiscal year 21-22. Someone want to second that?
second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So you want to give us a planning board report? We heard earlier from Misha that there's a lot going on.
Yes, there is, Tim. Give me 1 second, please, okay?
I'd like to motion that we move bills and claims.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
So give us a summary
Sure.
of planning board activity.
Yeah, we had a very lively, busy session last night, 2-hour meeting, 2.5-hour meeting. There are 4 applications before us, included a request from Net Zero or Zero Place about building a retaining wall along the west side of their property because there's a steep drop off along the up to the rail trail, and there was fear of erosion. And the planning board is reviewing that, and they don't see a problem with what, at least initially, what the proposal is. There's a plan to go visit the site and see exactly what is going on with the building as well as this retaining wall. So we'll see where that goes. Stewart's was here talking about their corner at Henry W. because their landscaping plan quite possibly may interfere with the future bike path that the town is putting in as well as we are. So they may need to make a revision to their site plan. We did talk about 5 Broadhead, and there was the question.
Wait, but well, hold on, Bill. You're talking about Stewart's and the shared bike ped path?
That's right, because the site plan has certain landscaping components to it that there's some concern with.
So, I mean, my understanding is that we were actually going ahead and not charging them to change their site plan because they were the ones who were actually accommodating the town and the village by they're willing to provide us with an easement onto their property to make sure that the bike ped path fit.
That's correct. That's right.
Okay.
And then we talked about 5 Broadhead, giving that to the village. There's a lot of legal technicalities, I believe, that need to take place before that can happen. There was discussion of whether or not we plan on keeping the property because that would give a different route to the
But
transfer.
our plan is not to keep the property at all. Our plan is to.
Yes,
right,
but we haven't made that clear. I believe at least to Stewart's. I don't think they know we're clear on that. But we should let them know that we want that property to be held by someone else other than us.
So that wasn't made clear to Stewart's?
Yeah, I don't think they were clear on it, no.
Okay.
Sidebar, what's the status of that RFP?
The status of the RFP is we're trying to tie these things up so that we can officially issue that RFP. So are we now waiting for some sort of planning review? I thought that was kind of perfunctory stuff. It's not perfunctory?
I don't know the answer to that one.
Okay,
Figure out who knows.
I'll try to
what
follow up what's going on with
tomorrow.
their,
Thanks, Tim.
yeah.
I thought the RFP was in the hands of the attorneys at this point.
No, the RFP is 100% ready to go. The only thing that needs to be included, we've already approved the RFP as a board. The only thing that's missing from the RFP are just dates when people have to submit by.
Sure. Okay.
So that's why we need these other things to be done so that we can give reasonable dates. Yeah, okay. I'll try to follow up on seeing what, when we can take ownership so that we can move forward.
And then there was discussion of 85 North Chestnut Street, the property across the street from Zero Place. Preliminary sketches were shown to the planning board. The plans for the possible crosswalk across the property that leads to the rail trail. Questions were asked about, design, how far along the design is. The height of the building is brought up. Apparently they need to be under 40 feet, I believe it is. And they may need to have a variance because of the peak of the roof may exceed that. But that's still being discussed. I did ask about what if they had any plans for an energy efficiency type of structure like the one across the street, and I didn't. They weren't sure at this time. And then two properties up on Millbrook Road for single-family homes were also part of the discussion.
What are they doing to those properties?
Two single-family homes. Floyd Niffen's, I believe he has developed those properties to a certain degree for, I believe, test wells and maybe for a driveway for access. A couple of questions did come up about how much clearing would take place. And then another topic came up about, at one point, a portion of this property was offered to the village for inclusion into the Millbrook Preserve. Are you aware of a discussion along those lines, Tim?
I mean, I remember conversations from many years ago, but what's the latest?
Well, the latest is I got an email from Floyd this morning. We're going to talk about that and revisit that idea.
Okay. Okay, is that it? Should we move on to Zoning Board of Appeals?
I'm ready. We need to appoint Anthony Saracino as
We
chair.
did. We did.
We did? Oh.
Consent agenda.
Oh, I think I was a couple minutes late, so maybe that's when that happened? Or was I sleeping? I don't know.
No. Yeah, it was in the consent agenda, so that's.
Oh, okay. Yes, we moved it as a whole. Got it. So we finally met after months of not having anything on CBA. Tony was the acting chair, so now he will move forward as chair. We're very grateful for his service for our board. We have 66 South Chestnut, currently a 3-bedroom rental, was looking for a variance for to make it 5 bedrooms. And there was a lively conversation about that, and in which there was a suggestion after the meeting that the variance would be subject to a maximum occupancy of 5 people, because 5 bedrooms is not accommodating in that lot. But obviously that's rewriting what the rules are. So I'm not sure where it's going to go from there, but I think the property owners are coming up with what else they want to approach the board about. And that
Okay. Yeah, it seems like the lot is a size that can accommodate 3 or 4 bedrooms, but not 5. So, you know, I think it would be hard for the ZBA to come up with a rationale to support a variance to add a 5th bedroom when the lot is limited in size.
The good thing about ZBA is that they just have their short list of questions that guide that process. Some of it is subjective, sure, but they have a nice little rubric.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to second your comment where you were thanking Tony Saraceno for taking on the role of chair, and you know, he's a longtime member of the ZBA, and I think we're lucky that he's willing to step up and serve as chair. So thank you, Tony.
There's a question, Michelle, do you know what kind of tree the Sally tree is going to be and where they're going to be?
I don't know what kind of tree, and it's going to be right across from where she lived. And I can't remember exactly, but tomorrow is the Shade Tree Commission meeting. So I'm going to take it to them and then I'll be able to report back.
Excellent. So we'll find out more details about the tree. That sounds like something we can be, you know, filled in on later after our Shade Tree Commission meets. I think that's it for our village board agenda. We're done for the evening.
Move to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Good night.